Yamiche, I'm very curious about what the behind the scenes was of how the president would get from the White House to the helicopter and to the hospital. He is one who enjoys stagecraft and believes that the visual message is extremely important. And I wonder if you have any behind the scenes on how that went down.
Well, we know that the president walked out of the White House in front of cameras. He did not speak to reporters, but he waved. And that, as we know, the president is someone who understands optics, so obviously he wanted to be seen. He then released a video a short time after arriving in Walter Reed that was filmed before he left the White House. And there he's saying that he is in good spirits, that he is essentially wanting to project the idea that he's healthy, that he's still in command. There have been real questions today whether or not the president could continue to be working, but the White House insists that he's moving to Walter Reed out of an abundance of caution and that he can still be working from there. There are White House officials today who are saying that he was working from the White House, even though the president's entire calendar was cleared today. And of course, he's part of that risk group as a 75-year-old overweight man. But I think in particular, the president was very cognizant of the optics. So what we saw was the president walk out of the White House on cameras and remain on cameras. When he got to Walter Reed, we saw him get out of SUV and walk into the building.
Getting anything out of the White House today, I know that there weren't a lot of people in there. My friends who are correspondents there were all tested, and I'm happy to report that at least the ones I know were tested negative. But we know 3 journalists tested positive. Do you know anything about them or anything else about what was happening in the White House today?
I know that the journalists that tested positive, many of them were, at least a number of them were at the briefing on Sunday with the president. And these are White House correspondents, of course, that have close quarters. The White House is not a very big place. The place where reporters are is a pretty close quarters. We don't have
it's extremely close quarters.
It's extremely, I think for people who haven't been at the White House, it might be lost on people just how close we are. I sometimes, especially before the pandemic, would sit shoulder to shoulder, back to back with reporters. Now there's been some social distancing where you'll have maybe a chair's length between 2 reporters, but we're not talking about a long distance. Reporters, of course, have been wearing masks and trying to social distance as much as possible, but it's scary to think about the fact that there are reporters now testing positive for the coronavirus because the quarters are so small. I myself was sitting in a booth in the basement today, so I think there are a lot of reporters who are trying to be extra cautious today and trying to remain even farther away from each other than before.
What sort of communications did the White House have through official channels with those who work in the White House? And just for a little bit of clarity, imagine a series of small closets. Not as big as a walk-in closet in the suburbs, but what one might call a walk-in closet in Manhattan, if you know what I mean. That's about the size of the booths where each network and each major newspaper works. There's one after another in the basement. It's extremely close. What kind of official communication about risk from the White House to those there today, Yamiche?
Well, today the White House was really talking about, again, washing hands, being socially distant, making sure to wear masks. The National Security Council said that all of their staff members are now going to be required to wear masks. But one of the most remarkable things that happened today while I was reporting from the White House with my mask on is that there were a number of White House officials who were speaking to reporters and taking questions without wearing facial coverings. That includes the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. That includes Larry Kudlow, the top White House economic advisor, and the White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany. Now, we did see in this hour that Mark Meadows was standing alongside President Trump when he was going into Walter Reed and making that trip, and he had a mask on then. But earlier in the day, Mark Meadows was not wearing a mask. So it goes to show you that this is the White House, even in the midst of this outbreak and people coming up positive, top officials in our government, that they are still not following the precautions that their own government is telling people to take. And that, of course, is wearing facial covering.
Shep Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.